Good evening, everybody. This is Three Deep with Wobby, brought to you by Manscaped.com. Manscaped.com. Head to their website, use the discount code 3DEEP. That's one word with the number 3, the word deep, and you get 20% off all your manscaping needs and free shipping right before No Shave November, which is kind of cool. I am your host, Joe Johnson, owner of VikingsTerritory.com, PurplePTSD.com, PurpleTerritoryRadio.com, and a couple other sites that are rolling out in the next few weeks, which should be pretty cool. Obviously, I am here with Mr. Mike Wobschall, per usual and per the name of the show. How are you doing, man?
I've been good. You know what, Joe? I know it's been a tough week for the Vikings faithful, so that's why we're here. We're here to help them feel better
Yeah,
and see if we can sort this thing out and set the stage for the post-bye schedule for these Vikings to see what the rest of 2020 is going to look like. And we have a cool guest tonight, so I'm excited
yeah,
for the show.
yeah. It's a new show. This is our third episode. The kind of the philosophy is each week to have a different guest on the show, and as Wabi alluded to, we have a very special guest tonight, Mr. Bryant McKinnie, Vikings legend who won a Super
Big
Bowl,
Mac.
not with the Vikings, won a BCS national championship. Basically, wins everything everywhere he goes, except for the fact that he's on our show tonight, which is a step down for him, I'm sure. How are you doing, man? Thanks for coming on the show. Well, the suspense. We
Big
may have.
Mac left.
I'm doing pretty
Oh,
good.
oh, there
Thank you
you
very
go.
much for having me. Sorry about
No problem.
that. Sorry.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on the show. As we talked about before the show, uh, if there weren't tech issues, I don't know. Maybe I'd be married by now. Yeah.
If there weren't tech issues, Joe, everyone would do a podcast. It
it-
couldn't just be experts like Bryant McKinnie and you who do them. Everyone would do it.
yeah. For those who don't know, Bryant, just you launched your own podcast recently with Dustin Baker, who's a senior writer for our site. Actually, kind of a small world situation on the Bleav podcast
Right.
network. Bleav in the Vikings, I believe it's called. Uh, how's that been going for you, man?
Yep.
Is that been fun for you so
It's
far?
called Believe in Vikings. Believe in Vikings with B Mac and Baker, and it's good. Like I really get a chance now to really follow the Vikings even more. Like I always would catch games here and there, but now I actually follow people and really get into what's going on. Like I just seen that Yannick got traded to Ravens.
Oof.
So I actually keep up a lot. So that's good too though, because now, especially from offensive line standpoint, I can give a little insight too on some things that are happening from there as well, and just a little more insight to the fans from a player's perspective of different things that could possibly be going on, or could be, going through some of the players' minds. So
Yeah. Now, Joe, a lot of times players will retire and they'll go on and do media, sports media, and sometimes you look at that player and you're like, I'm really surprised that guy went into that. He didn't like doing interviews. He didn't talk much, whatever, when he was a player. Then you get other guys, Joe, who you're like, I'm totally not surprised that guy is doing sports media after he played and he's retired and now he's doing it. And Bryant, who I was with for several seasons when I was a young pup, cutting my teeth with the Vikings in 05, 06, 07, 08, all the way through that 09 season, Bryant, when obviously you guys made some magic happen. Bryant was a guy who I'm like, that guy, he's not just focused on his matchup this week for the Vikings. Bryant takes a look around the league. Bryant takes a look around the NBA. Bryant takes a look around the sports
tennis
scene. So
world.
I am not. Yes, I am not. Big Mac is not a surprise that he's getting into this type of thing post-career, because he was not a one-trick pony, just a football guy. Big Mac's a well-rounded guy. I'm not surprised to see you doing this, Brian, and it's good to see you doing it. It's good to talk to you.
Thank you very much. And actually, I was doing something down here for CBS called Sports Desk. I was doing like a post-game wrap-up show on Sundays as well. So, but I actually got more into the Vikings last season. I actually traveled to a lot more games and watched them at home. And then that's kind of how I kind of fell into this a little bit.
What is your take on the current state of the team? I mean, this week there's been articles from credentialed writers where the headline is literally just fire everybody, period. I mean, it's been a little crazy, and as I'm sure you're not familiar with me at all. I'd be worried for you if you were. I'm a little bit more of a wet blanket, I guess, is my brand as compared to other people, and so I feel a little validated in what's been going on lately. A little irritated that I'm not getting more credit for being such a pessimist for all these years, but it just feels like there's two camps out in fandom. Some people that do think this is the culmination of years of bad moves by Spielman. Other people who just think it's a culmination of bad luck and youth with injuries and people opting out for COVID, so on and so forth. I mean,
Right.
what is your take on just where things are at with the franchise?
I know a lot of the fans do feel like Spielman is a big play. I do think COVID and some players opting out plays a part too in the fact that, and I kind of say this on the podcast a lot, the fact that like a lot of these young guys didn't have a preseason, they didn't have OTAs really or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's like some of them are catching on slowly, and some are going to catch on a little slower just because they haven't had a chance to get with their new team and get a rhythm and all that type of stuff. But like everybody had that same situation too, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
you can't really hang your hat too much on that. But I just know probably for some of the development for some of the younger players that plays a factor. So yeah, that. But I'm hearing the Spielman thing a lot, actually, from a lot of the fans.
Yeah.
And I never really thought about it, but I guess at a certain point too, he's a guy who has been around a while, so maybe it's okay to get somebody else in at a certain point who, is a little younger, and because I just feel like the game has changed. It's not even the same, and the coaching style and the way you interact with the players is not the same from when I was there. People a little more sensitive. Like, it's a lot more things. So I feel like he probably was maybe part of that older regime, like guys like me. And it's probably just a new way to go about and scout things too that maybe he's not open to. Sometimes when people are stuck in their ways, it's like that's what they're used to doing, and it's like you have to evolve too with the times.
Definitely.
And I'm maybe not sure if he's really doing that.
It feels like that's kind of the brand Zimmer has too, right? He thinks he's like Bill Parcells in the early '90s or something. One of the questions I actually wanted to ask you is something that your former coach Mike Tice was quoted as saying when he retired, which is essentially a lot of guys don't want to be coached anymore. And Tice is like one of the nicest guys ever. I don't think he meant that as a slight. He just meant like the generational shift is different, and each one of these guys is kind of their own brand. But then there's also these new wave of young offensive-minded head coaches that are kind of revolutionizing things. Do you really feel like there's been a fundamental change in terms of how football is played?
It definitely is a change in the coaching style. Like I know coaches who are still at like say University of Miami, and they're like, we can't coach these guys. I have guys who are teammates of mine who are there now as coaches. Because you have to be like, there a coach would all cuss you out and you get it together and go back out there and do your job. But now if you do that and take that approach with somebody, they may go in the tank and not even be productive anymore. So it's like it's so hypersensitive now. But I feel like these athletes are still stellar athletes and probably even more athletic even time goes. But it's just that the attitudes and the personalities are a little different. And then now you have all this like social media and all those things where people want acceptance and get likes and get comments and it just feeds their ego even more. It's just a little different. It also takes away from the celebrity too, though.
It takes
like
away from
it. Down and you're so accessible.
Okay.
I think so because it waters you down and you're so accessible. Like I feel like certain celebrities, when you're a celebrity, you give yourself, but not all the time. Like I should know everything about you. Like it should be some type of mystery still there. But I feel like a lot of people feel like they have to keep putting out this content to keep everybody engaged, which you do, but to a certain degree.
That's a super interesting take, man.
And then, all right, another take I want to say, sorry.
No problem.
It also now doesn't make the football players as big of celebrities as they used to be prior, because you have so many other people, random girls, random influencers who just have a big following for no reason.
Yeah.
And now they feel like they're on the same level as you because they have the same amount of followers, which is not, we don't, like, one of us is talented, one isn't. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's
No,
like,
I do.
Don't ever feel like we're the same just because you have the same number of followers or you have more or whatever. Like, so that's the thing, too. I feel like it has taken away from some of these players' celebrity a little bit, too.
Yeah, and I feel like, I mean, I've got a pretty strict, and I'm by no means conflating myself with you or any player in the NFL or really any semi-employed adult, but I have like a strict no reading of comments policy on articles that I write because it just feels like there's not a lot of positivity that comes from that, and I can't imagine
Right.
the pressure that is on guys like you, and how personally some of these people take football, especially. It feels like it's just so like the core
Right.
to people's identities that they'll you get death threats and all this just really
Right,
kind
and
of
it's like,
nasty stuff.
let me come to your job and say all these things to you about how well you work and things like that to see if you like it. Like, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Like, you
yeah.
have to realize it's still people's livelihood is their job, and you're like going crazy on them. I always looked at that and I was like, now, what if you just find out where they worked at and you can go in there
Yeah.
with a megaphone and just scream how terrible of a job they do? And just like, I feel like that's they would, get to understand how that feels. And I feel like don't take everything so personal. It's a game at the end of the day, but it's a job. But come on, like,
Yeah,
give people a break. Nobody's perfect.
Yeah, I do think that would be a really, really awesome segment on your podcast if you just went to like Subway and started yelling at people about the ciabatta bread or whatever. Speaking of
Right.
speaking of like a change in philosophy, I know again that Tice is a really nice guy, and I've tried to. He's alluded to a few things when he's been on our show and also in recent interviews, like in the Pioneer Press and stuff, about his thoughts on the zone blocking scheme that the Vikings are currently employing and its inability to create a clean passing pocket for Cousins. And I asked him at the end of last year, he was on our like season wrap-up show, if there was anything the Vikings could do in the offseason to kind of mitigate or improve that from a pass protection standpoint, because they were like 27th in the league last year. And he literally was a one-word answer, and he just said no. And I was like, oh, well. So that's kind of where a lot of my pessimism comes from, because I'm a big offensive line guy, a big Big Ten fan. I like what Wisconsin does, and I just feel like I can't get my head around what the Vikings, not from just necessarily a scheme perspective, but just their philosophy on drafting interior offensive linemen, moving tackles to guard, guys that have never played guard before. And as a guy who, obviously it was incredibly successful as a left tackle in the league, I mean, I would love to hear your thoughts on what you think is going on there, if you're a believer in moving tackles to guard, so on and so forth.
If I'm going to move a tackle to a guard, it's normally because somebody's injured, and I feel like they're probably the better player. But, like, tackle is like a guard has a protection. They have, like, and when I say protection, as far as, like, they'll have a center that'll come help them, and then they have the body presence of the tackle. So they're in the middle. So it's not so much, a D tackle, they don't have a lot of space, tackle, you can be on the island at times, because if the center and guards work with each other, and as you start drifting back and creating space, you're on the island by yourself, and now it becomes you and one-on-one. And if you're left tackle, you're one-on-one with probably the most athletic defensive lineman on the field. You know what I mean? So they just have to have really good feet, if you ask me. If you're going to do that, you have to really trust and believe that this guard has really good feet. Because being a tackle, you have to have good feet and be able to move your feet.
Yeah, and just to add on to that too, I mean, offensive line, more than any position, is about these five guys knowing what each other's doing and playing as a group.
Yeah, chemistry.
Yeah, you want every position to play as a group. I get it. But, like, Adam Thielen, unless it's a route combination, Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson don't need to know what each other's doing. They need to know what the defense is doing. Offensive line is different. So anytime you get into having to shuffle positions along the offensive line, I know you want to get the five best guys out there, but even more than that, you want camaraderie and continuity. And so you want to disrupt as few positions along the line as possible when you're trying to shuffle around this starting lineup, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just feel like a lot of people, when you drafted them as a tackle, as a guard. And so you want them to get comfortable with that, and not even though, when you get in the league, and especially as offensive lineman, they always say the more you can do. So if you're able to play a bunch of different positions, then you become more valuable. But however, it's like, let's play the position that you're the best at and focus on that.
Do you feel like I mean, I'm sure it's different with every different guy, but in regards to like Ezra Cleveland, and people are still in regards to talking about maybe the Vikings trading Riley Reef before the deadline, saying, well, Ezra Cleveland is the left tackle of the future. That's still the case, even though they've been trying him out at guard. Do you feel like there's a chance to maybe ruin his from a mental perspective what he could do as a rookie at left tackle when you're moving him not only to a position he really hasn't played, or especially on the other side?
I feel like if you brought him in as a left tackle or tackle, put him there. Like the best way to gain knowledge or whatever is experience. You have to have experience. Whether it's good or bad, you got to go through the good and bad times, whatever. But you just need experience. Instead of moving him and have him playing out of position, and then you're looking at it like, well, he's not doing well. That's not the position he plays. So put him in there and let him grow at that position.
Yeah,
and you could do it this season because you ain't really going too good anyway.
Yeah.
You might as well do it this season.
Yeah, I like that, and I want to echo that. I remember Stephon Diggs' rookie season. The coaching staff wasn't playing him early on. He's not ready. He doesn't know the routes. We haven't seen him do it. And finally, the Vikings had so many injuries at wide receiver, they had to throw this rookie from Maryland who got in the 5th round into the lineup. Well, guess what? It's Stephon Diggs. Look what he is now.
Right.
And what would have happened if the Vikings never would have had those injuries at wide receiver? They would have kept playing these guys who were not as good as Stephon Diggs just because they weren't rookies. And this is not 1980s anymore or the 1990s. These guys can come in and start playing, and you don't know if they're good or not until you play them. So play them.
Right.
Yeah, Zimmer's whole I don't play rookies thing is kind of being turned on its head.
So,
right now.
That's a thing for him. That's a thing for him not to play rookies. I didn't know that.
I don't know.
That was
I don't know
on defense especially. That's his label anyway. Whether or not it's fair, I would argue that it's partially true.
I know what you're saying, Joe, because I think he said that about some guys in the past. Especially when he's feeling pressure to play them. So I do know where you're coming from on that, Joe. At the same time, Zim's a bottom line guy. I mean, so he's going to play the guys who he thinks are going to help him win, especially when he only has one win through the first, third of the season.
Yeah, and it's Spielman came out I think yesterday, the worst timed press release or quote ever, saying that no one's giving up on the season. The season's not over. We'll reassess in a couple weeks whether or not the season's over. And then like 10 minutes later, the Ngakoue trade was announced, and the team ended up.
I don't understand that. Can somebody explain that to me?
I hoped you would explain it to me. I mean, you played for the Ravens too. No. I thought maybe you had some sort of because basically what they did was get 5 sacks in 6 games and lose like 30 draft spots from the 2nd to 3rd round. I don't get it. I don't know why. We didn't have a lot of access this preseason or during training camp. No one really did, and so we didn't really get to see what the on the field product was, and a lot of us took what the team was saying as the truth about, people were talking about an improvement over the 10-6 record, going 12-4. People are talking about them losing in the Super Bowl, so on and so forth. I don't know how you can't see, first of all, how hurt Danielle Hunter is, and secondly, that if the team went 10-6 with the talent that they had at every position on defense, especially last season, and just the bloodletting that they had this offseason with the cap money and losing more players than, or at least creating more question marks on defense than answers, how they didn't see that this season was going to be, I don't know if you want to call it a learning experience or what. So, people are saying, well, they traded for Ngakoue thinking they could make a run, then they traded him knowing that they couldn't. And it's like, well, didn't you see? I don't get it. Outside of Ngakoue's agent saying he's not going to re-sign with you guys next year, so you might as well trade him, which would be kind of a spectacular thing for him to do after a couple weeks, in my opinion. I don't understand the move whatsoever, and it does signal to me that they know that the season's over. So saying that just kind of rings false to me, and I think it did to a lot of people, and that's what pissed a lot of people off, to be honest. rant over.
Yeah, I didn't understand that at all. So, and the Ravens are basically seem like they're stacking up over there on defense.
Oh,
Yeah,
Adding him, and they got Calais Campbell and everybody. So it's like,
yeah. We're not in the room with Rick and George Payton and Zim, so we don't know, and Rob Brzezinski, so we don't know. We don't know what they were told, right? And we can sit here and try and guess, but the one thing we do know is that he's gone, and so that's that's 50, 55, 60 snaps a game that someone's going to get now, and that someone's probably a young player, and that someone has a chance to be part of the 2021 picture, and I think that's probably how you're looking at it.
You got to take advantage now. Somebody else is given the opportunity.
Yeah,
they have to really take advantage of that and kind of make a name for themselves, and make a statement saying like, see, this is why you should have been playing me or whatever. But like, you know what I mean? It's like, seize the opportunity right now because you're given one.
Yep.
Do you, a lot of people are talking about the team perhaps trading other players, and it looks like Riley Reef is outside of there's been news that a lot of teams have been calling about Kyle Rudolph, like the Patriots, that Reef might go to a team like the Titans, who had an injury at their left tackle position.
Yep, that makes sense.
And Reef is having a really good start to his season. I feel like he's gotten a lot of unfair guff from Vikings fans. I think he's been better than what people think he's been. I know he makes a lot of money, but that's left tackle money. Brian, what is have you looked at Riley Reef, or do you have an opinion really on his game or Ezra Cleveland's game, in terms of I guess either from a trade perspective or just what they've done for this team? And how hard is it to play next to a guy as a left tackle when you have a left guard who has been a PFF, regardless of who it's been the last couple seasons, a PFF rating of under 40 each week? Is that make your job a lot harder when you don't have some support next to you?
Yeah, it does. Just because then it's like, I don't know why he's grading out so low, but it probably makes you feel like you got to do more, and then sometimes you feel like you got to do more, you end up doing less. So having somebody who isn't at a certain level next to you just probably adds a little more stress onto you, because you're also trying to look out for them as well. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
As far as like with their tackle and the three techniques and stuff like that too. And it's like, you shouldn't have to feel like that. You should be secure in them being able to handle their job and their business too. So if you would like to play with somebody who is at a certain level next to you, because then now you can kind of focus on just your job and not peeking over every once in a while to make sure that they're okay too.
What do you think, Wobby? Do you think we're going to see more trades, and if so, who? And
I do. I think you're going to see more moves, Joe. I think that's probably a smart move for the Vikings. That may be their intent. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, because you don't want to take a bad trade just to take a trade. And I know baseball saying for GMs is sometimes the best trades you make are the ones you don't make. But I do think that we're going to at least see attempts at it, and the players you mentioned make a lot of sense. I think Riley Reef makes the most sense because he plays a premium position. Big Mac knows that. He held down that premium position for a decade for the Vikings. So that makes a lot of sense to me. I think the Titans make a lot of sense. I think he fits their brand. I think he fits a position of need given the injury to Taylor Lewan. I think Kyle Rudolph makes sense for a few teams, and I'm not wishing these guys away. I've known Reef for a few years, but I've known Rudy for many more, and I love that guy, and I don't wish him away here at all, but I know that he can provide a lot of value from a veteran standpoint, from a sure-handed standpoint, and from a red zone standpoint, and who doesn't need more help in the red zone as you're getting ready to make a playoff run? So I think a lot of those names make some sense.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. I mean, I started doing this in 2015, so I'm still relatively new at it as well. And every season, off season, it just felt like the team was one piece away from making a run, another run rather. And it just feels kind of like we're in this weird waiting room to see what's going to happen.
Hey, you don't want to throw the towel in on a season ever. You don't want to do that, because the players, Bryant, know when management has done that, right? And so when that has happened, and that's the wrong message to send. With that being said, let's just say you're a 2021 Vikings fan, and you're sitting in the future right now in the year 2021, and you're looking at what the 2020 Vikings are doing. Aren't you happy with the Ngakoue trade? Wouldn't you be happy with a Rudolph or a Reef trade for a draft pick or something? I mean, you would be, because you're kind of thinking maybe those guys aren't in the picture for 2021. So if we can get value for them right now, that's great.
Right.
That's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is if you're Amir Abdullah, veteran running back who's number 3 on the depth chart, and your future is not secure with the Vikings. If you are Eric Wilson, whose future is not secure with the Vikings, or Anthony Harris, whose future is not secure with the Vikings, you're kind of sitting there going like, I don't care about 2021. Bro, I'm trying to win in 2020. We're trading away our best players. So there's two different ways to look at it, and neither one of them is wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice. I feel like the Vikings as a franchise have obviously been like a top 5 regular season record team since 1961. So we've never been really terrible outside of a couple seasons, and I think that's part of the reason why we never have really drafted and developed a quarterback outside of Culpepper, Teddy Bridgewater, both of which had their careers cut short for knee injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just don't want them to kind of have a foot in both camps, where it's like we are rebuilding, but we re-signed Cousins to a guaranteed $45 million in 2022, which is probably going to win us a couple games that we should otherwise have lost, which would have increased our draft picks, so on and so forth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially with all the tank for Trevor talk.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you this, Big Mac. Did you, when you were a player, think about the years when you were young? Like there was a while there where you were entrenched as the left tackle and ain't no one taking your job, for like 5 or 6 years. But think about when you were a rookie and you were young and you were trying to make it. And then think about the later stages of your career where you were still the best left tackle, but there's always some young pup nipping at your heels. Think about those two spots. Did you care? Did you pay attention to whether or not your head coach was a lame duck head coach, or whether he was going to be back next season? Was that a factor in your mind? Did you care about that?
I
ain't going to listen to this guy. He ain't going to be here next year. Did you ever think that?
No, I never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
I always just try to focus on me making sure I'll be back next year.
Yeah. Exactly right. I think that's how it is. So I don't get into this whole people ain't going to respect Zim because he's going to be fired next year, or the whatever head coach. Guys, this is a 1-week league, isn't it, Big Mac? This is a 1-week league for the vast majority of players and coaches. There are very few Bill Belichick's, Tom Brady's, guys who have a guaranteed spot for a long time. It is not that way. Right. It's a 1-week
Kirk
league.
Cousins is. I'd be so your rookie year was my freshman year of college, and it's that era is a very special era to me, and I've been trying to put together this documentary on the 2004 season, because I feel like everyone talks about 2009 and 1998, but there's not a lot of talk about that last season and the W that was put down on Lambeau Field, Moss's last year, so on and so forth. As I've said a couple times, we've had Tice on our show, and he's a nice guy, and you're obviously a super nice guy too. So I don't expect you to really answer this question, but college me would not forgive myself if I didn't ask you this about the Red McCombs era, especially as a guy who played under both McCombs and the Wilfs. Was there a sentiment on the team that you guys had this potential on offense that was not being taken advantage of because of a lack of investment elsewhere, perhaps on defense or in general under McCombs?
Yeah, we were. When I was there, we had like the number 1 and 2 offense or something like that, but we had like the 31st defense or something. So it was like, we scored these points, but then it's like we're letting up a bunch of points too. So we were always in like top 1 or 2. I know for at least like 2 or 3 years in a row, like top 1 or 2 offenses, but it was like we can't stop anybody. So that could be a little frustrating too. And then, Coach Tice would kind of say it too, So
yeah. I remember I remember McCombs had a tweet or a comment back then, or a quote about a reporter asked him why he wasn't spending more money on the defense, and there was a time where he was almost penalized for being so far under the salary cap that he was under the minimum. And he said,
Hello, I had out 98 days under Ray McCombs trying to get my contract done.
Yeah.
He essentially said that the defense was already championship caliber in his mind, which, as you just alluded to, wasn't the case. And there was the season, like the 6-0 season and the 5-1 seasons, where you guys missed the playoffs both times. Moss walked off the field against the Redskins. I always thought that was a protest against the status quo then, but also clearly I took this a little too seriously back then. Yeah, it just I appreciate you being honest about that, because it felt like the fans, especially, it's like, man, we're missing out on something special here. I mean, this is, Culpepper had 39 touchdowns, and it was just it must have been rough for you guys to go through that.
It was, just because you put up 30-something points, but then you put up like 34 points, they'll put up 36. Like, so it was just like, you just had to go out there and try to score as much as you can and just try to help, like, keep your defense off the field. But, you can't, every week you can't have a scoring fest. Like, some teams are going to slow you down.
Yeah. Yeah. Not to reminisce on negative things, but such is life as a Vikings analyst, I suppose, as I'm sure you're aware of. Who is your? I haven't asked you this, Wobby, either. Now that we're in the bye week and there's not a game really to talk about, who do you guys pick as the representatives for the AFC and the NFC in the Super Bowl this year?
It's always hard for me to say that. I have to wait till December and see how teams are playing, because around that time, teams are kind of in their rhythm, so you kind of get a chance to see who's in a rhythm and who's playing well, and then also because you still got like a lot of season left. We're like in the second quarter of the season, so you still want to just also see as far as injuries. You know what I mean? So on paper you can say somebody, but then also injuries and just different things take place that'll affect the outcome of a game.
That is so well stated by Big Mac right there.
I should have said if the playoffs started today, but I want to pick.
But I want to do it anyway, Big Mac. Okay, I'm going to do this anyway. All right. I'll pick Seattle and Baltimore.
Oh, that's weird, because that's
so
actually my pick too.
Baltimore beating Kansas City.
I don't know, man. I guess. I guess that'd be a great game in the playoffs. You know what I mean? And I'm not into betting or rooting against anybody. I'm into rooting for people. Big Mac knows that. But I like Baltimore. I like John Harbaugh. I think their defense is really good, even though they don't have Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and Suggs anymore. Those names that we all know, they still got a really good defense. And the Chiefs lit them up earlier this year, right? So they have to meet again in the playoffs. I remember when the Vikings swept the Packers in whatever it was, 16 or 17. I did not want to see the Packers in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because I'm sitting there
different in the playoffs too.
Yeah, we beat this team twice in the regular season. You know what Green Bay wants? They want a third chance at us. And maybe that's the way Baltimore would look at a matchup with Kansas City in the playoffs. I think the Chiefs are a great team, but I think Baltimore is too. If I had to pick it right now, I'd pick Baltimore and Seattle.
I can agree with that.
Yeah, the thing with Seattle, I mean, Russell Wilson obviously is playing on another level outside of the game he had against the Vikings up until the last drive, I guess. But their defense is a little suspect to me. I don't really know what to make of the NFC right now, to be honest. The NFC East is a mess. I don't know how good the Packers are. The Bears look really good, but who knows about that?
I think Tampa Bay and Green Bay will be there, Joe. I think they'll be there in the end with Seattle.
I think I think Tampa's figuring things out outside of Brady lecturing everybody in the locker room every week, which could get old really quickly if they start losing.
The rumors are that Antonio Brown.
Yeah. Oh boy.
They come there.
Oh boy.
To Tampa.
Yeah.
Right. He's signing there tomorrow.
That's been swirling all day today. Yeah.
Oh.
Big Mac sandbagging this thing now, Joe. Big Mac knows. He knows where AB's going.
Yeah,
all those Miami boys. They talk to each other.
Big
Mac's like, I heard that he might go here. Big Mac probably talked to AB today.
I got to get on our fantasy app real quick. Make some
Big Mac's
moves.
texting AB right
So what day of the week do you guys do Bleav in Vikings, and where can people find that?
We normally do it on Tuesdays, and then it's available like on Spotify and everything on Wednesday morning.
Okay.
We try to do it on Tuesday because that's the guys' off days, and like no more football normally going on. So we moved it to a Wednesday one day because there was a Tuesday night game, so we moved it to a Wednesday.
Okay. And you got Adrian Peterson coming on. I've heard through the grapevine on the 4th of November. It sounds like, which it should be pretty cool for you guys. And I think in talking to some of the Bleav higher ups or the managers that set this interview up for us, which we appreciate, we're going to start posting your podcast on VikingsTerritory.com and PurpleTerritoryRadio.com so people can find it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, we always you scratch our back, I'll scratch yours. I always like to end the show on a creepy note, and I've done it yet again. But yeah, man, I really appreciate you coming on the show. We'd love to have you back down the road, and people definitely check out the Bleav in Vikings podcast. It's really good. Dustin Baker's a great guy. Obviously, Mr. McKinney is good at what he does, and I again appreciate you having coming on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, Big Mac. Talk to you soon.
Okay, see you.
All right, everybody, again, go to manscaped.com, use the discount code 3DEEP, the number 3, the word deep, all one long word, and get 20% off your next or first order, and also get free shipping. They have a bunch of patented technology, incredible RPMs and splitting of atoms, which apparently you need these days for the thickets that occur after or before No Shave November. Wobby, I always like chatting with you, man. We haven't really talked a whole lot this week. I figured you would brighten my spirits a little bit, but yeah, man, it's been an interesting week. What did you say to me when we sat down for lunch that time that traffic on Vikings.com is either really good when the team is good or really, really bad. And I think we're experiencing some of that because everyone's got an opinion, a very heated opinion as to what the Vikings should do. No one seems to agree on anything, this podcast included. But that's part of the fun, though, right? I mean,
it is. It is part of the fun. There's no rubric for how to do this thing at the NFL level. If there was a rubric, everyone would do the same thing, and it'd be no fun. Just like we talked about. If there was never any technical difficulties, there'd be even more podcasts than there already are. So, right?
And the Vikings are having the technical difficulty right now.
They are.
What you say?
They are. This season has not gone the way they hoped, the way some people thought it would. Injuries are a big part of that. Substandard performance is probably an even bigger part of that. And there's no way around it. Guys that the Vikings thought would play really well are not playing really well. And some of those guys are key players in key positions. And when that happens, you have one win through the first third of the season. And that's where the Vikings are. Does it mean the season is over? Probably, but not for sure. And the guys who aren't going to get traded away and the guys who are still in this thing, they got to get their ass in gear. And that's the bottom line. And that's what Mike Zimmer is going to demand of them. And I think the Wilfs would be very wise to let everyone around that building know that Mike Zimmer's the head coach this year and he's going to be the head coach next year. So you better get in line because Mike Zimmer's part of the solution, not the problem. And if you move on from Mike Zimmer, all you will have done is dig the hole deeper.
Yeah, I mean, there's a risk in, the grass is always greener in some people's minds, right? But you don't know what you're going to get if you replace the powers that be, and if it's going to be an improvement or not. And I just feel like, let's just take Zimmer out of the equation really quickly. I don't know what young, really promising coaching candidate would want to come here under the current limitations I guess this team has in regards to, again, having kind of their foot in two camps. It's clearly a rebuild, but they also have, especially with the reduced salary cap due to COVID, over 35% of their salary cap going to two guys, one in Cousins, who was brought in to be a final piece, not a piece really to build around, and I'm a Cousins guy, but if they're not willing to ever figure out how to protect him or even bother to try, I don't know why he's here. First of all. Second of all, you have Dalvin Cook, who I love and who is a once in a generation talent, but I also worry about that contract and the fact that he's yet again missing time because of a non-contact soft tissue injury. We could see ourselves in 2022 paying those two guys over $60 million for a $175 million cap, and either one's benched or the other one is missing significant time because they're not putting him on any sort of pitch count. I think in the Seattle game when he got injured, he was over 20 carries or touches at that point. They're really relying on him heavily, and it works when he's there and he's spectacular. But I really, I always look at things as a Vikings fan as what's the worst possible negative outcome, because that usually is a high probability event. And I just that you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. I'm not saying they should have gotten rid of Dalvin Cook, because they shouldn't have, but it just, that aspect of it scares me. So I don't see what coach would want to come in and say, well, I have this young defense. I have Justin Jefferson. Adam Thielen is going to be good for years because the way he plays the game. Irv Smith has emerged the last couple weeks, which is great. Dalvin Cook is young and great. You still have Danielle Hunter, Eric Kendricks. But the Cousins thing to me just is such an albatross, and it doesn't make sense to me.
Yep.
It never did why they extended him, because they should have known that this team was going to rebuild. They just should have. I don't give them any passes for that.
Here's the worst case scenario, Joe, in my opinion. The worst case scenario for the Vikings is they miss the playoffs, but do well enough to get, they're picking, 14th or 13th. Mm-hmm. They fire Zimmer, and Cousins is the quarterback next season.
Yeah.
That's the worst case scenario. If that happens, you got to wonder if there's a mole in the building. You can't do that. That's the worst case scenario. So who are we? Are we rebuilding, or are we recharging? Which one are we? Decide that, and then balls to the wall toward that end. Either scenario, Zimmer needs to be part of the picture. Because I've been around the guy. If everyone worked as hard as him and did as well as him, the Vikings wouldn't be in this spot. It's not a Zim problem. So people got, in my opinion, respectfully, people got to move on from thinking Zimmer is the problem. I'm not saying coaching isn't the problem. There might be some other areas of the coaching staff that could get better, whatever. We get into that in a different podcast, not this one. It's not the head coach. It's not motivating players. It's not setting a standard. It's not setting expectations. It's not Zimmer. I'll tell you that. It's not. And he's in the middle of a rebuild on defense that's going to work out. Trust me. We've already seen him do it once. He did it in 2014, and he built it into one of the best defenses in the NFL in 2017 and 2018. So he knows what he's doing. This is not a Zimmer problem. The problem areas are in other spots, in my opinion.
Well, something interesting that Dustin Baker, who's as I've mentioned 5 times, the co-host of Big Mac's podcast, Bleav in Vikings, that writes for VikingsTerritory.com. I saw something he posted on Twitter the other day that was something that I guess never occurred to me. But there's, outside of I think 4 or 5 coaches since the advent of the Super Bowl, all the other out of 4 or 5 guys that were all Hall of Fame coaches and that all had Hall of Fame quarterbacks, every other coach won a Super Bowl with their team within the first 5 seasons of being there. After that, they kind of become, maybe other teams figure them out. They figure out their system. Maybe players stop buying what they're selling, so on and so forth. And
I get it.
I feel like Zimmer's maybe, the peak of his defense was the regular season of 2017. They had that historic third down conversion percentage, and then they haven't really been the same since really the second half of the Saints game, the Eagles game. They came out in 2018. The defense looked like they weren't buying anything Zimmer was selling, and it turned out he had basically pulled a beautiful mind and had a shed in his backyard where he had all this yarn trying to make this perfect defense that could beat Doug Peterson, and he was making it so the players, veterans, weren't playing. They were thinking too much, and they got better, but they really haven't been the same. But even at their peak, to me, it felt like they were good in games that didn't matter that much, to be completely honest. And I just feel like Zimmer, going off of what McKinnie said about this new era of coaching and how much the game has changed, not just from a player perspective with social media, but just on the field and philosophically. I don't know if Zimmer's old school pound the rock, but run first, but don't invest in the offensive line, so on and so forth. If that, especially at this point, how many 7 seasons now into his career, is going to, I don't know what other tricks he has, I guess is my point. And so he already had the keys to the kingdom. He already maxed out the salary cap. He already had every player he could have ever wanted. He got the facility he wanted, the new stadium. It was just this amazing, the Wilfs gave him everything. I mean, Sheldon, everyone talks about Cousins limiting their opportunities, but they still signed Sheldon Richardson after signing Cousins. That's not really the reason why they cut everyone this offseason. He's only making $20 million this season, so that's not why. So I just feel like rebuilding with him as the head coach, to me, is like, we've already seen the best of what he can do. Why are we doing it all over again, especially when the draft proved that he has learned nothing from his successes or his failures, in terms of the offensive line being the Achilles heel of this team the entire time. So that's my rant anyway. But he's been successful, and he's had a really good regular season record. And again, there's no guarantee that, especially for the Vikings, anyone that they bring in after him or a Spielman will be an improvement. I think Vikings fans have been spoiled by really good regular season records and going to the NFC Championship every 7 to 8 years. And so I don't know, man. I really don't know what to do. I'm glad I'm not the person in charge, but I really like talking about it, clearly.
Yeah, so do I, and that's why we're doing it right now, and that's why we're going to keep doing it. It's fun to do, and we'll see what happens. You make a compelling case on your side. I try to make a compelling case, for him, and ultimately it's Mark and Ziggy and Lenny Wilf who make the decision.
Yeah, and they also make the decision as to why I'll never have a press pass. So I don't think anyway, people, thanks for tuning in to the 3rd episode of 3 Deep with Wobby. I want people to definitely tune in next week live, Wednesday at 8 p.m. Mr. Matt Burke is going to be on the show. We kind of have a theme going, and there's going to be a surprise guest calling in to surprise Mr. Matt Burke that I think people will enjoy. So I don't want to spoil that before it happens. But yeah, people definitely check in there. Check out manscaped.com, discount code 3Deep. And yeah, man, it was great catching up with you, Wobby. I had a really good time, and I think it was a good show.
Joe. It was a good show. We appreciate Big Mac coming on. Enjoy the games, everyone. Enjoy the games, Joe, and we'll regroup next week.
Sounds good, man. Take it easy.
You too.